Hello, everybody. We're going to give it a minute here and let people get settled.
She's not going to be here, right? She's not going to be here.
No.
Oh.
Yeah, she couldn't stay. I'm going to give you a job.
What's that?
I'm going to give you a job after our first sit. Yeah, and you can just use the block to keep it ajar.
Oh, this one. I thought the other.
No, this one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right, let's begin. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Step one, get comfortable. Find your ground. Nice rooted distinction about the way you are sitting or reclining or however you are positioned right now. Feel what is underneath you and allow it to really hold you. And from there, rise up so that you remain a little bit alert, a little bit more present than you might be if you were simply curling up for a nap. And even if you are reclined at this moment, just experience the longitudinal space that makes up your spinal column. That height when you're upright, the space between the ground and the crown. And then notice your breath. Notice the sensation of inhale and exhale. And the rise and fall. As if the breath is riding waves in and out. At the crest of each wave of inhale, pause just for a split fraction of a second. And then exhale and ride the wave down. Welcome if you're just joining. Happy you're here. Riding the waves of inhale and exhale. And at that crest of the in-breath, pause for a split second of noticing. And maybe it's more than noticing. Maybe it's celebrating, rejoicing, thanking this ability to be cognizant of the life force that's moving through us in the form of breath. Perhaps with this cresting of breath in and the slow slide of breath back out, there's a rhythmic quality that perhaps aligns with the beating of your heart. And in that place of synchrony, there is an abundance of peace. And if there isn't, that doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. Notice what is there, and then you've done it right. if and when the mind wanders away and leaves this place of presence, welcome it back, begin again, connecting to a sense of rhythmic presence, in and out, up and down with these waves of breath. Take another sweep of breath in, and then gently ride the wave back out. Bring your awareness back to your immediate surroundings. And welcome again. I'm so glad to be here with you this evening. In geological or ecological terms, the place where water meets land is referred to as a riparian zone, R-I-P-A-R-I-A-N, riparian zone, not repair to fix, but ripa, like the edge of water. And this is a very dynamic place on Earth where water meets land. It is constantly changing, visibly so. Picture the beach at the shoreline or the edge of a riverbed or a stream, and you know how dynamic that place is and how much change is constantly happening. The flux of sand and dirt and rock and foams of waves and the relative levels, high or low, of the tides or of the river. Like, those things are always changing, and visibly you can watch it, right? And so, metaphorically speaking, our bodies are like walking riparian zones. We are human riparian zones because we're so much water, more than half, at least, depending on how old you are and how big you are and how hydrated you are. We're, maybe 70% water. And so there are millions of riparian zones in the body where the water that we are is meeting some sort of matter. And even if that matter is in itself very much hydrated, like organs are, and even bones are, right? Everything inside us is porous, but there are who knows how many spots where water is meeting something that is relatively more solid. So we're just walking around these just human walking riparian zones. And if you extend that metaphor, then what that means is that there is all this dynamic change happening all the time inside us. And we don't need to understand this concept to know that. That's an obvious thing. We know that cells are dividing and redividing and multiplying all the time. And we feel the change. We feel it from the moment we wake up to the moments that we fall asleep at night. And the thing about that is that I want to point out and elaborate on and sort of explore a little bit this evening in our mindfulness practice is that if we are these human walking riparian zones, and by the way, I realize I'm not using this term in its formal proper sense. So if anybody out there is a scientist, I get it. Like, yes, I know it's not really what we are, but metaphorically speaking, if we are these walking riparian zones, and if change is bound to happen when one form meets another, then I believe that what we also are is walking alchemists. Alchemy happens when one thing is changed into another, more useful, more productive, or more golden state. In the old-fashioned sense of the word, an alchemist is one who changes metals into gold. Right? And so if this is true about us inside, if we are walking around as alchemists all the time, as we evolve and change and have opportunities to learn and grow, then we embody this natural truth of constant inner change and transformation. Now, granted, not always desirable changes are happening. These riparian zones can be red flags for what's happening in the margins. Like, for example, a cancer tumor. We have the margins measured to find out how bad it is, how far it has spread, what sort of treatment we need. And likewise, people living in the margins of society, that's where the most attention and care is required. And so these riparian zones are like red flags being waved. Look here, look here. Don't sink into the comfort and habit of the middle. Go to the edges and see what needs to be addressed. See where change is happening and needs to be redirected for the greater good. And so often, these merging of the edges of two distinct entities are creating something that's far more giving, that's far more beautiful, that's far more comforting and valuable. Two strangers move into adjacent homes and then become neighbors and friends for life. So often. Two friends meet and fall in love, and a family is born. And from the family, new life perhaps is fostered in some way, whether biological or in a different form. And these children arrive, and babies turn into teens, and the teens are alchemized, thank goodness, into adults. And form their own families and merge and shift and change and grow and flourish in these zones, right? So life is going along as it does, as we've always known it, and then all of a sudden we're at the edge of something drastically different, like a global pandemic. And change happens immediately. We're in this zone, and then we're thrust into a new entity. We reckon and grapple and learn and grow from there. You know, pre-pandemic life turns into mid-pandemic life, and that might turn into room for creativity or a new passion or room for grief to be experienced, or room for rest to be had, room for healing and new awarenesses to grow, new understandings, new discoveries. And in these moments where inertia meets an undeniable catalyst, these are golden opportunities. It is alchemy itself. Where water meets land breeds new soil. And new soil is the most fertile ground. So let's play with this a little bit in a mindfulness practice, in a quiet contemplation of change and growth that gets fostered. So once again, a comfortable seat or a comfortable recline, whatever makes sense. And I'll invite you, if it feels safe in your conscious realm, to picture yourself at the edge of some body of water. Maybe it's just a little stream in the woods. Maybe you're standing gazing out at the vast expanse of an ocean. Maybe it's a lake. Maybe it's a bank of snow at your curb. Doesn't matter. You're standing at the edge of this place. You are in a riparian zone. And just notice what image arises for you. Don't belabor it, right? Just notice. First one, I like to go with the first one that comes to mind. First one is best one in these circumstances, I think, for me. And notice the quality of the water. Is it frozen? Is it fluid? Is it clear? Is it murky? Notice the quality of the land where you're standing. Is it muddy? Is it green? What's growing around you? What's on your feet, and how, if anything, and how is that? How are your shoes or the soles of your feet meeting the ground? Can you feel connected if you're wearing shoes through those shoes? If you're barefoot, can you feel rocks or stones or shells or sand? And are you aware of the way the two elements feed each other? The way the water or ice or snow or whatever it is feeds the land, and the way the land slips in and under and feeds the water. Can you find a way to feel fearless fullness as these two places make themselves known to you as one? Maybe there are sights and sounds and smells that evoke for you this mixed air that's fresh and um, and damp, humid in a comforting way, a nourishing way. And as it will happen, your mind will drift away from this place and you'll go shopping or go out to eat or go to work and come back and welcome yourself back. And begin again to feel the ground and recognize the water's edge. Take another few moments. Notice your breath. Maybe say a gentle farewell to this spot that perhaps you've been standing in your mind for these last few minutes. Maybe even thank it for its beauty and its grace, its elegance, or its humble presence, however you experience it. And then gently come back to this moment. There's a lyric in a song by the band Counting Crows, and it says, "She walks along the edge of where the ocean meets the land, just like she's walking on a wire in a circus." And I really relate to that in the way that so often it feels precipitous to be standing between two states on the edge of things. And the fear of falling off that wire can feel like the threat of drowning, like it's too far to the ground. It's too much, overwhelming. And so often, water is used in describing a sort of anxiety when we're on what feels like unnavigable ground. Like we're in too deep, or we're in over our heads, or we've gone off the deep end, or we're experiencing some sort of tidal wave of emotions. Like so much water comes into these anxiety states in the way we've used language to capture them. But what we forget in these descriptions and in these experiences really is that the ground is there. It's just underneath. And that they need each other, the water and the ground. Remember, like the search for life on other planets hinges on, is there water there? And these two related states, the water and ground and the edge between them, might feel uncomfortably ill-defined sometimes. It's the fact of their porous nature that makes them a unifying, fully realized experience. The fact of being on the edge between life as we used to know it and life as we know it now is fertile ground. It can be painful ground. It can be scary ground. I know that for so many, it's incredibly stressful ground, me included, having to figure and refigure all the time how to live safely and well with ourselves and with each other. But if we try to separate out and limit or too narrowly define who we are and where we are and what we need, I feel like we'd just miss the forest for the trees, to use a whole different sort of metaphor. This is a poem by Sylvia Plath, and it's called Admonition. If you dissect a bird to diagram the tongue, you'll cut the cord articulating song. If you flay a beast to marvel at the mane, you'll wreck the rest from which the fur began. If you pluck out the heart to find what makes it move, you'll halt the clock that syncopates our love. So this idea of separating out or needing to be here or be there or have it be all this or all that is a place without music, a place without joy, a place without poetry, a place maybe without love. Because one isolated being, separate from all the rest, is a potentially lonely state. So, for our last sit, if it feels safe and comfortable in your consciousness, I'm going to invite you out to sea. Maybe you're on a big boat if being out to sea feels like too much to conjure, right? Make your boat as big as you need to have it. Maybe it's a kayak or a raft, or maybe you're just swimming or floating on your back. This is a calm sea. There's no raging storm today. Skies are blue. Wind is gentle. Temperature's warm. So all the ways that it can feel inviting and safe and calm and refreshing. Watch the waves gently lap underneath you. And every so often, take your mind, your vision, your conscious presence, and float down to the ground at the bottom. Gentle, warm sand, beautiful aqua marine life swimming all around you, colors, sensations, beauty, and most of all, quiet. Recognize your continued natural ability to breathe. If your mind wanders away from this place, invite it back without judgment. If the volume in your thoughts gets loud or splintered in thinking, sink down again. Gently, slowly, quietly, peacefully. Touch the ground underneath the moving waves for as long as you need to, and float back up. Recognize the changing nature of the surface of the water that you float on, and the changing nature of the ground underneath it all. Notice the rise and fall of your breath, continuing to make its presence known and perhaps to align itself with the gentle rise and fall of the waves that you're floating on. At some point, if this imagery doesn't feel useful, clearly it's totally fine to let it go. But if it is useful, just continue to navigate the relationship between the movement of the waves and the gentle presence of the ground at the very bottom, and all of the glorious life in between. It isn't wrong to think thoughts that are not related to the assignment. It's 100% right to notice that they're there. That's what mindfulness is. And it's in that moment that you've arrived in presence. Let that presence be joyful. Let it be forgiving. Take a few more moments to recognize your breath, to recognize your present moment surroundings. Ride the waves back to shore. Take your time. And then deepen your breath. Bring some gentle movement to your extremities and working your way inward. You can shift your spine around a little bit and wake yourself up. I thank you so much for joining me. I hope you find yourself at peace in the edges of this and explore and celebrate the potential for alchemy at any given moment. Thanks, everybody. Be well.